Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Alex. So glad you came. It's so kind of you to give me a chance to speak about some of these matters that have affected everybody, really.
Yeah. And I'm speaking with Emily Elizabeth Windsor-Cragg, who is first cousin to the current Queen of Great Britain or United Kingdom.
Yes, and I found out that relationship late in life because I had been kind of pushed out of the nest and sent across. They get rid of people. Diana didn't last. And the history of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family in Britain since about the 1880s has been of maximizing their position by getting rid of some people that are troublesome. Okay, there's a list since Victoria. Once Victoria's husband Albert died, for the next 10 years, she was draped in black and in solitude and literally ceased ruling, but she wouldn't abdicate or give the throne up to her son Bertie because she considered him dissolute and too lazy and too much of a womanizer to serve as king. And so about 1871, the Masonic order headed by Grand Commander Albert Pike began corresponding with a Dr. Massini about what to do about the way things were going, and they decided as Masons to network the Masonic orders around the Scottish Rite Masonry and to stage 3 world wars. And so Victoria's being dormant and inactive allowed the elites with a lot of money, principally the Rothschilds, to get behind this Masonic order. And Victoria had two grandsons. There was Albert Victor and there was Georgie. Albert Victor was the presumed heir and Georgie was the Duke of York. Albert Victor was a sensitive guy, very, very sweet, and he liked lots of ruffles on his clothes. He was somewhat effeminate. And Victoria and her husband didn't really approve of Albert Victor, and he didn't really like the lady that they set up for him to marry, whose name was May Tech, who became Queen Mary. And so Victoria saw to it that Albert Victor was removed from his position as presumed heir. There was a story floated that he had succumbed to a fever, but that isn't what happened at all. What happened at all was he had married a woman, Elizabeth, and they had a little girl, Alice. Elizabeth was taken from Albert Victor and put in an insane asylum, institutionalized and lobotomized. And the daughter was put up for adoption somewhere. And Albert Victor was taken to Glamis Castle in Scotland, where he remained for the rest of his life until 1931. My father knew about that. And that was one of the reasons that he didn't trust his own father. There was a lot of distrust in that family during that time. That was also the beginning of the Boer War, which was the first step into false flag and war profiteering. Okay, so they got rid of Albert Victor so that Georgie, the Duke of York, became the heir to the throne when Edward VII died in 1911. All right, Georgie and Albert Victor had been in the Navy in the 1880s. And they learned a couple things in the Navy. One, they worked around the East India Company, so they had access to the drug markets, cocaine and opium. But they also learned to beat somebody up without leaving any scars or marks, which is the Navy's way of disciplining rowdy sailors. They are very harsh, but they don't leave any marks. So that when Georgie married Maytak, he was also already involved in the East India Company drug trade. He had access to cocaine and opium. And in the photographs of Georgie, Duke of York, from the 1890s until his coronation in 1911, some of the photographs, he's glassy-eyed, he's not wholly present, okay? So Georgie had a, let's say, a lawless beginning, all right? And he was brought into the Order of the Bath because his father had to bring him into the Masonic order. But he was grandmother's, Victoria's, favorite grandson. He had sat on her knee and listened to her wax eloquent about how she wanted Britain to be the empire that ruled the whole world. Now, she wasn't the first to think that, because if you look at the floor of Westminster Abbey, now what does this have to do with anything? But you see, the floor of Westminster Abbey was built in 1245 AD, okay, by King Henry III, I believe. And it was just uncovered in the last 5 years. You know, when Elizabeth II had been crowned on it, it was covered with a carpet. And when her father, George VI, was crowned on it, it was covered with a carpet. But they just uncovered the floor in the past 5 years. And they have renovated the floor because it's a tile with a picture on it, okay? And the picture on the floor of Westminster Abbey is one large snake wrapped around all 5 continents, so that the British Empire is seen as a worldwide controlling mechanism since 1245 AD, all right? So Victoria's dream of having an empire was well substantiated in history. All right, and then Elizabeth I had brought the empire forward when her navy defeated the Spanish Armada, and British maritime law became dominant over the common laws of the land, which has happened all over the West now, that maritime admiralty laws dominate over the laws of the land. People have rights under the laws of the land under the Magna Carta, but people have no rights under maritime admiralty law. And that's what we're finding in nation after Western nation, that commercial laws are dominating over people, and commercial laws mean that people have no rights. And this is how war profiteering happens, because the law is not the common laws that say, well, the people have the right to free speech, the people have the right to association, the people have a right to privacy. Those laws are being subsumed under commercial laws, where big business and corporations have absolute power, and there's nothing that people can do about it. That's the situation we have in the United States also. All right, so Victoria was watching this happen, that the laws were being manipulated to favor the banksters, and Georgie became a Mason because his brother, the presumed heir, was supposedly dead, okay? And so When Georgie was to be initiated into the Order of the Bath, he traveled to Bavaria, Germany, with Albert Victor, but also with one of his other cousins, Tsar Nicholas of Russia. You know, the three cousins, grandsons of Queen Victoria, Tsar Nicholas of Russia, Kaiser Wilhelm, and King George V. They were first cousins, and they got along great. In fact, they got along so well that they dressed like triplets, so people couldn't tell them apart. You literally had a hard time knowing which was which, because they were all born around the same time. They all had the same kind of beard, and they hung around together all the time. Particularly, they hung around in Denmark for the summers together. All right. So the three cousins all showed up at Kaiser Wilhelm's new house in Bath, Germany, during the summer solstice of 1888. Now, Albert Victor was already a member of the London Order of the Masons because he was the presumed heir. But this was Georgie's turn to become a Mason under the rules of the Order of the Bath. Now, if you've ever researched those secret orders, they have different names. There's the Order of the Garter and the Order of the Thistle and the Order of St. John and the Order of the Bath, and there's, you know, all kinds of names for them. But they all basically teach the same doctrine, the same Anunnaki Illuminati doctrines, okay? And their initiation ceremonies are all very much alike. So if you look at the initiation ceremony of any of the secret societies, they all have a sexual component, all right? Alfred de Rothschild was also at that initiation ceremony. He belonged to the Order of the Bath. And we know that that is true because in 1902, Alfred de Rothschild sent a gift to Georgie, who was then the Duke of York, of a nice little medal with an award on it, reminding him of something in the past, which he wanted Georgie to remember was an obligation. We don't know exactly what it was, but we know that Alfred Rothschild was at the initiation when Georgie was initiated, and there was a sexual component, and Alfred de Rothschild's maid was at that same initiation, and 9 months later, there was a child born in Bavaria, Germany, okay, who was sent to live with the Schicklgruber family. Now, the Schicklgruber family, the head, Alois Schicklgruber, and if you've seen a picture of him, he has a square face like a block of wood. All right. And he raised the boy, and the boy was later called Hitler, Adolf Hitler. Now, Adolf's face is round like Georgie's face, not square like Alois's face. So we can tell that Georgie was possibly the father of the one who became Adolf Hitler. So they began an association and a relationship that affected the whole world beginning around 1912. Around 1912, let's see, Adolf was 5 years older than my father. He was born in 1889, 1912, he was 23, okay. We know that he went to London, and we know that he spoke some English. He learned English from his half-sister. He lived with her in London till she kicked him out, and he had to go back to Germany and join the army. Okay, those are the events of his life. But in the meantime, he was able to contact his father in London, George V, who was now king. All right. And there was a woman who featured in George's eldest son's life by the name of Wallace Warfield Simpson. She was married to a naval officer by the name of Spencer, who was a Satanist, okay, possibly in the Masonic order, who put her through trauma-based mind control and taught her tantric sex, okay, and she was introduced to Edward, the eldest son of Georgie, in 1931. And they had a romance, and they had a child in 1934, Elizabeth. And that Elizabeth is still alive. She's 83. She's in Tennessee. And her website is we3.org, we3.org. And she tells the story of being the daughter of Edward VIII, the son of George V. Okay, so she was more or less sloughed off because Edward didn't marry Wallace. Believe it or not, he didn't marry Wallace. Now, this is going to be hard for people to recognize or accept, because everybody knows that Edward VIII married Wallace Simpson. No, that's not really what happened. The same as what happened to Albert Victor was never told, and what happened to Prince John, who did not die of epilepsy, wasn't told. And what happened to Tsar Nicholas, because he asked for sanctuary when the Rothschilds were attacking him, and George said no, that wasn't told. You see, the royals keep the ruling house very, very close and very tight, and they get rid of anybody who messes with the Rothschilds. Tsar Nicholas kicked the Rothschild Bank out of Russia. And so Alfred de Rothschild had to get even, and he did so by getting rid of Nicky. And George allowed the Rothschilds to get rid of Nicky because Nicky knew that Adolf was George's son from the initiation back in 1888. You see how this all connects? This is all starting to connect.
Emily, how did you learn that Adolf Hitler was the son of King of United Kingdom, George?
Okay, in reading about my father, I began to trace the characters, and I began to trace George V. I traced his life. I bought a couple of his biographies. I found out about his time in the Navy, and I saw that he had a problem with drugs, okay? And then I ran into that event in 1888 in Bavaria, where the three cousins were there, and Alfred de Rothschild was there. And then on the Buckingham Palace website, I ran into the medal that Alfred de Rothschild had given to George V. And I began putting two and two together, you see. Because I knew they all hung out together, but it occurred to me, you know, there was this event of the murderer in the streets of London, Jack the Ripper. Have you ever read about Jack the Ripper?
Yeah, yeah, I actually believe that it has something to do with this ritual in the summer solstice, where Adolf Hitler was conceived, that it was
yes,
a long time ago, and that this Jack the Ripper was somehow a celebration of the pregnancy, or so
he was trying to keep the maid Rothschilds out of London. He was scaring her from being in London. And because Albert Victor was not involved in the conception of that child, he had no reason to be suspicious. He had no reason to harm anybody. He was a wimp. Okay, he was a wimp. And so it all came together with the medal and the Order of the Bath and the house at Bath, Germany, and all the cousins were there. And you just count forward 9 months and you come to the birth date of Adolf Hitler. Well, that just isn't a coincidence that he just happened to be born exactly 9 months after the initiation in Bath, Germany. Okay, and then his appearance so different from Alois Schicklgruber. Alois looks like a block of wood, and Hitler has the same hairline as his father, George V. It just all came together, and it made perfect sense why George V was beholden to the Rothschilds, why he had to follow the Rothschilds' dictates with respect to Tsar Nicholas, why he followed the Rothschilds' dictates to allow and facilitate centralization of the banks in 1913, why he allowed and promoted the Balfour Declaration to send the Kingdom of David from Britain back to Palestine, why he allowed and actually served in the founding of Tavistock Institute. You know what Tavistock Institute does. Okay, well, George V was one of the primary movers to create Tavistock Institute. He was also a supporter of the Kalergi Plan and the redistribution of cultures and races in Europe in order to bring about Grandma Victoria's one world order. It all fit into place. And so George V had set up the conditions to initiate 3 world wars by the time that his eldest presumed heir son, Edward, was 25 years old. And Edward couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't do anything about it at all. He was being sent off on trips around the world and go here and be that. And, you know, he was the golden boy that loved the people and the people loved him. But behind his back, King George V was setting up the New World Order, operation by operation, the centralized banking, the Zionist push for Palestine, the Tavistock, tricky politics, the immigration policies. And so after George died in 1936. And I have a very strange picture of his funeral, because the picture of the funeral doesn't match the text of the stories, the biographies of him. Now, in the biographies, it says that George was in a lot of pain. He had fallen off his horse and he was in a lot of pain from having a broken pelvis, it says. Okay, and so his doctor, to ease his misery, gave him a little too much morphine when he was 71 years old. Well, if that had been true, okay, it would have been said that he died of natural causes, more or less. You know, let's not get technical. Okay, his funeral would have shown an open casket, right? But his casket was closed. His casket, there's no picture of George in state upon his death, which is very unusual. The other thing about his funeral is that the family isn't at his funeral. The family's not there. There's the British Army, there's the German Army, we're sitting where the family ought to be, but the family's missing. And so I went back to the King story and read about that event again in what was supposedly my father's autobiography. It wasn't just ghost written, they made it up. Okay, it was a terrible book. And there's nothing there about a suspicious event surrounding King George V's death, which is, in these days of disinfo and fake news, I can spot fake news when I read it, okay? So the information, the text we have about George V's death is fake news. I don't know what happened, but I know that the pictures don't validate the text. You know, a lot of times pictures don't validate the text. So at that point, when George V dies, we have no idea what his relationship was to Adolf. Was he getting along with Adolf, or was he not getting along with Adolf? We know that Wallace Warfield Simpson had been the intermediary. She was an MI5 agent who had been the intermediary between George and Adolf during World War I from 1917 to 1921. She served the king at that time. But then in 1931, she met Edward and they had their affair. But what did Edward know about Adolf Hitler? Did he know him as a half-brother? Or did he know him merely as a German agent, as a troublemaker in Germany, as a covert operator? Edward never said. He never, in his autobiography, said anything about having a half-brother, Adolf Hitler, which is one of the reasons why his autobiography is known to be false, because all the other information that's left out of it. You know, you can tell a book by what it doesn't say, as well as by what it does say. And Edward VIII's autobiography doesn't say anything about Albert Victor having been deposed from his reign, although he told Wallace Warfield Simpson in 1931 that he knew his uncle was imprisoned in Glamis Castle. He didn't talk about the problems he'd had with his father as a young kid growing up, or how his tutors differed from his father's rule or reign. He didn't talk about the fact that he was excluded from all official papers, from all official policy, his whole growing up, that his father had done literally everything behind his back and never explained anything. He didn't talk about what really happened to Prince John. He didn't talk about what really happened to Tsar Nicholas. Okay, you see, the King's story is loaded with disinfo and fake information. It didn't even talk about his own children. Edward had, he sired a son in Paris in 1918 with a dressmaker, and then he paid for that son. He supported the woman and built her a dressmaking company. All right, Edward had Elizabeth, sired Elizabeth with Wallace Warfield Simpson, and then she got kicked out and moved to America with one of his doppelgangers. And so he got a look-alike for Wallace, who was the sister of the American artist Georgia O'Keeffe from Madison, Wisconsin. And Wallace's look-alike was named Claudia Ruth O'Keeffe. and Edward married her the same year his father died. Well, she looked just like Wallace, and she gave Edward the excuse he needed to leave the monarchy because Edward's father had already gutted the monarchy of all of its power. George V had already gutted all of the power away from the royal house. It was just now a figurehead. And so Edward was eager to leave. And so he used Wallace Warfield Simpson's name upon his wife, who looked just like Wallace Warfield Simpson. And he got out of the royal family because he wasn't going to play ball with the growing collusion between the Rothschilds and the Windsors and the wars of the Masons. He didn't want to have any part of it. Now, in the middle 30s, around 37, 38, Edward was party to a treaty between England and Germany, which was facilitated by I think the name was Spear. I'm finding out more about that. I'm in the middle of finding out more about that treaty between Germany and England in the mid-30s, but that was before the war broke out. And one would think when the war broke out, that treaty would have been immediately abrogated. We don't know whether that treaty was abrogated or not, because that treaty has never been made public. Lots of treaties have never been made public, particularly commercial treaties that allow and aid and abet human trafficking, human experimentation, and exploitation of children. Those elements in commercial treaties have been allowed to continue, particularly since the Greada Treaty that Eisenhower signed with the Greys and the Anunnaki in 1954. And that has a lot to do with the migration patterns and the acceptance of Sharia law that's going on in Europe today. All right, those commercial treaties. All right, so Edward never wrote about the relationship between Britain and Germany. He never wrote about his half-brother, Adolf Hitler. His autobiography is a concocted fabric full of holes. So we have to go elsewhere to get the information. But what we know is that just as the 9/11 attack was staged by a lot of covert elements, World War II was staged by the same covert elements, because it was the Rothschilds' banking system that holds the whole Masonic order together. That's how we know how it worked. Now that we're seeing the Masonic orders and the Illuminati operate fairly openly, we can look back and see how they operated only even a century ago. Oh, so that's why World War I happened. Okay, it was part of the Albert Pike directive to be staged using banking money, profiteering on arms and drugs and running guns. I mean, they're doing the same thing now. It's a profit. It's a business. Can you believe it? All of this misery is just a business to those people.
Emily, do you know, I have seen, I believe, on a UK column, British,
Yeah.
Yeah, I have seen that some documentation that Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini were paid by MI5 long before they got in power in Germany and Italy. That they've got paid from MI5.
That would make sense, because Wallace Warfield Simpson was MI5, and Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's the way wars are being, and revolutions are being staged now. George Soros pays protesters $25 an hour to protest, just the same as Rothschilds paid Bolsheviks in 1916, 1917 to protest against Tsar Nicholas. It's exactly the same people doing the same stuff, because it's just another business, just another war business to them.
Yeah, I believe that the family Zackheim, if you know Dov Zackheim, who was
Yes.
involved in 9/11, that his grandfather, I believe, was involved with the Bolshevik revolution.
Yes, and so they're just doing the same thing over. Zackheim is known to be the mastermind of the 9/11 attack.
Yeah,
And yes, I have a
lot of
report.
money, a lot
Yes.
of money, your US American citizens' money went to Israel, and Israel is the Jerusalem would be the headquarter of New World Order. You know, the Temple of Solomon, the third Temple of Solomon, would have been built there.
Yes, and their legislature buildings are all built in the occult, Luciferian, Molochian style of Satanism. So once you see the pattern of the behavior of the Illuminati bankers, you can look forward and backward and point out where they have been doing business. And so there's still a lot of information I don't have. My father didn't reveal, and I never talked to him about Adolf Hitler or about the change from Wallace Warfield Simpson to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, or how it felt for him when he realized, when he was in his early 30s, that his father, George V, had basically given away the business to a group of Rothschild bankers so that a whole new government, worldwide government, could take over like great-grandma Queen Victoria had wanted. None of that was in my father's biography, and he kept it all secret. I'm certain that he felt he would be assassinated, because assassination was one of the methods that that group of Illuminati have used. They have used assassination ruthlessly. The only reason I'm alive is because I was so lost. I couldn't find myself, for so many years. And now so much water has gone under the bridge, and we can see the pattern that has existed for Illuminati world war after world war, utilizing the drug market and the gun running market and paying protesters to protest. That's where we are. So here is the book that I put all of this in. It's not a very big book, and there's two versions of it. There's a black and white version that's only $7, and there's a color version that's $17 because of all the color pictures on the inside. And it lays out the timeline that that shows the throne of England has fully cooperated with the Rothschilds' war profiteering system. They have been fully cooperative with that. And in that accusation that I make against them, I'm also accusing them of treason, because they have betrayed their own kingdom to the wishes and ambitions of people who are Luciferian, who believe do what thou wilt, who have no sense of limits or boundaries to their behavior. They have repudiated the covenant that they swear to keep. Queen Elizabeth says she will protect and promote the law, she will protect and promote the church, and she will protect and promote the culture. And she has simply allowed the war profiteering movement of the Illuminati to dominate Britain ever since she stepped foot in Westminster Abbey. And so I have my charges against her behavior on my website, which is called holyconservancy.org. And I put all the charges up there. Of course, they're only in English. And so your countrymen won't be able to read it. But I'm doing an interview with you today and with other people around the world to say to the British Parliament, we need to say to the British Parliament and to the Privy Council, they have a counterfeit queen there who is not living up to the vows that she made. She signed up at the top, not down at the bottom. And there's a government there that's seated with pedophiles and influence peddling and corporate bribery and commercial over the laws of the land, the Magna Carta, and the 1689 Bill of Rights, okay? The whole organization of the Crown and the Parliament at this time is in opposition to the covenant of the Kingdom of David itself. And so that's what I speak to wherever I can. And I really appreciate the opportunity to tell this story because it's in the Brexit all the time. The people who vote for Brexit are the people who say, we don't want this kind of collusion among corporations to keep us slavery, keep us in slavery. That's not good. That's not good. So that's why I do this. Yeah. Have I filled in enough of the holes?
Yeah, and she is, or the British government or British regime is involved in genocidal methods.
Yes.
And I don't know, doesn't she, Elizabeth Windsor, also earn money on maybe depleted uranium or nuclear?
Yes, that's one of her main businesses. And I don't know how she steps foot in a church with a straight face because she's supposed to be the head of the church as her ancestor, King Henry VIII was, and he dominated the church. She's never even been to seminary, okay? She's never even achieved the level of a priest of her church. She doesn't know anything about the church except to warm a pew seat, okay? And the church has gone through such a terrible period of lack of leadership. Now, the church is embracing practices of the Illuminati and of the Anunnaki that are in direct opposition to the church's own teachings. And the church says nothing. The church should be the ethical critic of the monarchy, and the church is silent. So the church doesn't like me either. I'm part of the Church of England, an Anglican. They don't like me at all.
Yeah. Emily, have you heard that there are clear evidence that at the London Olympics 2012, there were planned a nuclear false flag operation in Great Britain? Yeah, it's clear evidence. The barrister Michael Shrimpton, who told about this preparing of this false flag, and they put him in jail for half a year until the nuke was out of Britain, I believe he said. And there were several more people who were involved in preventing this false flag. And the nuclear device or the nuclear bomb was from Soviets, so they wanted to cause a problem with that people would believe that it's from Soviet. So I believe even some Russian Secret Service was involved in preventing it, because it would be, they would say that it was Russians who did it.
Yeah, trying to stage World War III. Well, you know, that makes me feel wonderful, because God must have intervened. There must have been divine intervention to keep that from happening. I'm just glad it never happened. Oh, wow.
There was another Ben Fellows, investigative journalist, who he worked for G4S, like security just personnel, and he learned that they were prepared to take their 200 FEMA coffins, the same coffins like FEMA coffins, and you put like four bodies in one coffin. So it's obvious what they were.
Oh, wow. Well, I know that American Navy captain, a woman, halted the atomic attack against Russia back in 2015. She was given the order to fire missiles at Russia, and she stood down and she refused to do it, and they threw her in the brig. All right. So there has been more than one.
Emily, since 2013, 7th of July, they wanted to do a coup. Janet Napolitano was involved, and they removed her after that. But you would go, they were planning a huge false flag. Many people would have died in your country, and United States would go to totalitarian regime. After that, next false flag was 1st of October 2013. They wanted to nuke the naval base in Long Beach, California. It was prevented 27th of, it was revealed 27th of September. Then next thing was on East Coast instead.
That's the one I meant, yeah.
The 17th of October 2013. No, I'm talking about 13. And it was prevented. Your government were already in underground bunkers.
Wow.
Ben, if you know who is Ben Fulford in Tokyo, he has reported that on Thursday the whole government disappeared and was away whole weekend. It was because the 16th of October 2013 they raised the debt ceiling, then they went for hiding, and it was a false flag on east coast of United States, even down in Puerto Rico. It was a nuclear bomb that was in the ocean. I believe it was how you call it, not Barbados.
Bahamas.
Not Bahamas. It's UK soil in the ocean. Bermuda, okay. But probably there it was, and it would be a huge tsunami over the whole east coast. And then after that, it was like once a week something nukes. Then from the end of 2014, even bigger false flag. They were it's opening of Hoover Dam Stargate. CERN would it's CERN, they say, was preparing a bomb with conserved energy that would hit the waters of Hoover Dam at that moment, electrically charged, and it would open a portal to Saturn. Also, so so over imagination and so, and what would happen with us. I can talk to you about it later. I have talked about.
Okay, and those things are out of the realm of my generation's understanding. But what we see is, since the 40s, when the United States Majestic 12 got involved in extraterrestrial technologies, there has been this massive burst of technological, quote, progress, and the progress is not in improving the lives of the people who are alive here. It's improving and building new ways to cause problems and break everything apart and finish off the world and bring it all to an end and stage an Armageddon. Okay, so we're back to the same group doing the same stuff, except now they have high-tech toys to play with.
And then I have heard about weapons from black goo, which is so evil. Like, so
I've heard about the black goo. Okay, and so it's literally out of our hands to know, how do we stop it? How do we stop it? And so what I do, because my own background goes back to the Anunnaki, I'm constantly trying to get with the remaining family of that incarnation, because we're all telepathic, and say, okay, well, what happened? Well, Marduk died a few months ago. Okay, great. And Ningishita is in Florida, and Ninma is in Hawaii, and they dug up.
Emily, are you talking about Anunnaki?
Yes, okay, but the Anunnaki are here now. Even so, they're part of the whole picture, and they run some organizations even today. They run the Jesuits in the Vatican. Okay, they run the Rothschilds in their Israeli outfit. They run Zionism. They meddle. Okay, they meddle even now, and so it has compounded the problem. Before, we thought we just had human bad people staging wars and running guns and running drugs, and now we have slavery too. But the problem is, it goes back to our relationship to the rest of the galaxy, because slave running and gun running and drug running are the business of space commerce. So
and
the
pedophilia and child sacrificing, child experimenting with like
it's all part of just, now the bankers aren't just doing the war business. Now the bankers are doing the space commerce business, which was like the war business. And so they're, you know how many children are disappearing every year?
I have heard that in your country, hundreds of thousands of people are missing.
About 800,000 per year. Children are disappearing off the street. Okay, and it's not reported. It's not reported by the government. It's not reported in internet statistics. There's no statistics about it. So the bureaucracy that is embedded in the United States government has its fingers into these covert operations, and the president doesn't have any access or way to get at them because of the classified information. Now, something good happened this week about that. Trey Gowdy is a a member of the Congress from the South, North or South Carolina. And he is on the Judiciary Committee, and he has a mind like a steel trap. He has this mind, and he nails Congress people and FBI and CIA, he nails them to the wall. Well, this week, the president granted him the highest classification that there exists in the US government. Trey Gowdy can now look into the space commerce and look into the space program and look into what NASA is actually doing about bombing the moon and sending a nuclear engine into Jupiter and sending another nuclear engine into Saturn. So Trey Gowdy has been empowered to begin investigating all of the space commerce and how that is affecting the people. And that just happened this week. And with a guy like Trey Gowdy, this is going to become very interesting because he's going to dig into it. He's going to dig into it. In the meantime, there's some galactic or cosmic power that has prevented World War III so far.
Emily, what I know about this, there was a plan to start World War III, and the plan is still ongoing.
It's still in place.
It was human beings that have been stopping it. It was the false flag, nuclear false flag at the London Olympics, and then from the second half of 2013, it was many nuclear false flag. Absolutely most of them was in the northern hemisphere of the Earth. It was one single in Australia. It was a nuclear missile. It was the only one I know about this, which was in the southern hemisphere. But what I want to say that it was humans who prevented it so far.
Yes, and there are some good people around who know what is going on. Now, in the United States, there is a YouTube channel by a Dr. William Mount, M-O-U-N-T.
Yeah.
And he is up to date on this stuff. I follow him. Ben Fulford, he's in Japan, of course, and Jim Corbett is in Japan, and they have a different way of seeing how it all goes together. You know, each of us who tries to bring forward the truth, we have our limits. We can only do what we can do, but we're doing what we can. Karen Hudis talks about the bankers' attempt to change the currency. Anna von Reitz talks about the problem of having the commercial and maritime laws dominating over the human rights. Okay, and Lauren Murray is a physicist who talks about what's going on with nuclear power. And I try to keep up with everybody, okay? But also I'm looking backward to show how these same tricksters and these same criminals and these same practices happened to us just before World War II, and they destroyed my father's reign. There was no way he could be king because there was no kingdom anymore by the time 1936 rolled around. All of the powers of the monarchy had been dissolved or dissipated or lost. And so he left, and he left a story that sounded nice, but it wasn't real, it wasn't true. And he lived out his life doing nothing, and it must have been terrible. Okay, he had either 3 or 4 children. He had Pierre Edouard in 1918, and then Elizabeth was born to Wallace in 1934. In 1936, he married Claudia. In 1939, he sired Margaret. Margaret is in Roanoke, Virginia, and she's a broken woman. I was born in 1944, and what happened to Elizabeth and Margaret and me, same thing, exactly the same thing. We were kidnapped. We were taken, put in the child trafficking social services adoption networks. Our documentation, our birth certificates were altered, and we were put up for adoption someplace that would never be found. Okay, now because I'm kind of at odds. Okay, I remembered going back my previous life. I was a granddaughter of Victoria in Moscow, born in 1865, died in 1918. And I remembered that life so well that now being placed in a Russian Bolshevik foster family makes perfect sense. Okay, because Elizabeth Fyodorovna was murdered by the Bolsheviks in 1918. Okay, being born this time, I came to a Bolshevik Russian family to convert them to Jesus. Okay, but it all works out in the end. And so even though I see all of this trouble, I can say, well, I think it's going to work out somehow. But maybe that's just because I'm an old lady. But I believe it's going to work out somehow. And how it's going to work out is people like you and Fulford and Karen Hudis and all of these people who are telling the truth are waking the people up so that more false flags can be stopped and prevented. We have to prevent them.
And we have to be cautious because people are trying to deceive us, of course, from the bad side. So and Ben Fulford, I listened to his information. He is too close to the Secret Service, and obviously they try to deceive him also.
Yes.
But for example, one thing was I have written about an information that Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, that there is report that she is a biological daughter of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
And I have written it one evening. Next morning in the news, you could read that Angela Merkel is out of office for a time because after something happened.
That's okay. They'll just have to wait. Sorry. Okay.
No problem. That she has some problem after a ski accident suddenly.
All of a sudden.
Like one evening I read that she is reported to be a biological daughter of Adolf Hitler. Half a day later, suddenly she's out of office. She's not there because she has got some problems after ski. And shortly after that, Ben Fulford has written that some spy from Germany came to Tokyo or to Japan and said that Angela Merkel has been heard for involvement in Fourth Reich.
Yes, okay. So we're learning to discern the real from the unreal, and that's the lesson that all of this has for us. Okay, now there's also for us to deal with the use of doppelgangers, the use of lookalikes, because I've been tracking Queen Elizabeth or just her activities and what she actually does, and the places she appears and all of her outfits. And she has about 6 women who take her place over the years. So you never really know when you're looking at Queen Elizabeth if that's her or not. Now, the practice of using lookalikes goes back to those 3 cousins, George V, Kaiser Wilhelm, and Tsar Nicholas, when they realized that they could dress like each other and nobody would know the difference. Okay, so Wallace Warfield Simpson's doppelganger was Claudia Ruth O'Keeffe, and they never straightened that out. My father had doppelgangers. He had lookalikes that showed up here and there and somewhere else, okay? Hillary Clinton has doppelgangers, and some of them look as young as you, and some of them look as old as me, okay? Who else? Obama had, I think William Mount said he had about 6 of them. Okay, we're working on number 3 or 4. So when you look at a picture of somebody, that might not be them. Okay, so what we're learning out of this is how to combine our intuition with our senses to discern whether what we're seeing is true or not. I think that's a very valuable skill. So even though I deplore the fact that we have to do this, it's sharpening our skills to discern what's real and making us more complete psychic, having psychic abilities. It's sharpening us up a little bit, as bad as it is. But I believe that it's all going to come out in the wash. I hope it is. We all do. We all want this warmongering to stop. And we want the people who live together in peace to be allowed to live together in peace. And the people who live together in peace do so. Their behavior is what I call civil, and it's based on the principle of consent. I accept certain limits and boundaries, and I consent to A, B, and C. Okay. The people who are uncivil are into force and coercion and power and manipulation, and they are not civil, and they cannot live at peace. So I'm here to insist that the people who can live in peace be allowed to live in peace. That is the substance of the prime directive that was taught in the TV show Star Trek. Do you remember? Are you old enough for Star Trek? No. Okay.
I haven't watched. I haven't.
Okay, I was a Trekkie. Okay, and the prime directive says, if people live together in peace, leave them alone. Let them live in peace. And that's what I'm standing for now, that the people in Northern Europe who already know how to live in peace, leave them alone. Don't flood them with people who cannot live in peace. That doesn't make any sense. Don't allow them to bring their philosophy and their cultic practices that are coercive and manipulative and violent and cruel into a peaceful community. You can't have that. And that's why the Kalergi Plan, which was instituted and promoted back in 1925 by King George V, is what has led to the situation that we have now with the forced immigration. The forced immigration. And what helped that along was the Rockefeller Institute pushing Planned Parenthood and pushing middle class, prosperous people to not have any children. The world's too crowded. You've got to only have 2 children. Well, when you only have 2 children, you're not replacing yourself in the marketplace, and you're going to be flooded with immigrants. Duh. So people who live in peace ought to be allowed to live in peace, is what I'm saying today.
Well, Rockefeller also financed the feminist movement, which is mind control.
Yes, and gets mothers away from their children so that the state can propagandize the children from day one. Yes, and it's deplorable. Now, in the United States today, thousands and thousands of families are homeschooling their children rather than allow them to be brainwashed in public schools. And one of the things I do is republish old school textbooks that are 100 years old. I have math textbooks and a grammar textbook I'm going to do, which teaches standard full grammar and vocabulary. The children are not learning the vocabulary, how to live with each other and get along in peace. So that's another interest I have. I've published, 21 books, and some of them are just children's textbooks to replace the Common Core curriculum, which was established under Obama, that has so stupefied our children. Our children don't know. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. I hope that children in Czechoslovakia are taught what's real and true.
It came here also. If you see the books, you see, I don't have the book here now, but it's like All-Seeing Eye of Lucifer and the propaganda. It came here too, and it's from the western part. But I'm not saying that there are not Luciferian here in Czech Republic.
The problem is our children won't listen to us, and they speak to us in a foreign language because the schools have twisted and changed how they think, from thinking with respect for the family and respect for the neighborhood and respect for how people get along, which is all about behavior. You know, some of the churches teach that you should behave like good people, and some of the churches teach something else. And we have to edit what the churches teach so that we have people treating each other with respect. So I think the Quran is going to need to be edited to get the violent and cruel reprisals against innocent women and children out of it. And there's some of that in the Bible also, and there's some of that in the Talmud also. And I think it's time we have another Council of Nicaea or Council of Trent. I'm a Christian, and edit our holy book so it teaches good behavior. Don't you think that's a good idea?
Well, I believe that all the religions are infiltrated and taken over by Luciferians or Satanism, and that many of the rituals that people are doing in Christian, so
just don't have any meaning.
Or the Islam also, that it come from the Luciferians in Vatican.
But what I find is that the real people with an affection for each other, an affection for God, are leaving the churches and reassembling in different groups, so that when the churches fall over, we're okay, because we've found other networking attachments, and we take care of each other, because the basic covenant between humans and extraterrestrial beings will always exist, because we connect with their minds. We can hear their thoughts, they can hear our thoughts. It's a oh gosh, you know, the 100th monkey idea. Okay, the 100th monkey idea is true, and that's between us and the beings that assembled this ecosystem we live on, and planted us here, that we can all communicate together without the keyboard, without the electronics. We can hear each other. And that is, I think, the basis of religion that's valid. The rest of it's just the rest of it. Yeah. But because I can still connect with souls from the past, and I hear thoughts coming at me from souls now. I don't know where they're coming from, but that's an interesting thought. We have the ability to connect with the whole universe. And that's where I think we're going to go. We're going to connect with the whole universe. And the crimes that are going on here are probably all also going on up there. I'll bet you. Space commerce is probably a problem right now. And so what we have to focus on is those commercial treaties that make crimes against children and the sale of body parts, for God's sake, a business. This has got to stop. Okay, the problem is in treaty law. We have to abrogate these treaties. The Greada Treaty, the Tau 9, and the TPP treaties are all based on commercial values. They have no human rights. They have no rights for the environment. They have no rights for the animals. They have no rights for the unborn babies, those commercial treaties. We have to fix those treaties, and then we'll be ahead in the struggle against organized crime and profiteering on misery. That's the approach I want to take, is to deal with the treaties. So now you know.
Yeah, and I believe also that each single person who, like this New World Order has gone so far now, but we have also learned a lot about these false flags, that First World War, Second World War was a false flag, that each person should get some compensation, economic compensation. And now we have an international court in Hague, which is, in my view, Luciferian. It doesn't work against any criminal.
It doesn't do anything. No, they're just.
We should have some kind of international people's court of justice where.
Yes, I work with a gentleman who has sat in those tribunals, Alfred Weber.
Yeah.
And he sat in the tribunal, I think, in Southeast Asia, that found the Bush presidency to be war criminals. Yes, I hear that from him too, that there need to be tribunals like the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, but you know that I wanted to tell you that Nuremberg trial was probably partially a fraud, because there is a documentation from like late 1944 that well, we have to sacrifice a few people like Nazis so that the rest will be transferred.
Operation Paperclip.
Yes.
Operation Paperclip. Yes. They all went into NASA and into psychiatry. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So
it's been ugly.
Yeah, and you know probably that Adolf Hitler didn't die.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have a picture of him in 1972 in London with his cousin, Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh my. And you know, there's a picture of former CIA chief William Colby, and it's from June 1945. And they would transport, he was waiting there with some others, they would transport Adolf Hitler together with a Crown Prince of Norway, father of the current King of Norway, who gave away this Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, Hakan.
Yeah, So William Colby, Hitler, and the Crown Prince of Norway were transported to, I guess,
Argentina.
Argentina, or then Argentina, and then
I
maybe was
wonder.
in Antarctica also.
I wonder about Antarctica. We're
Antarctica.
not allowed to go there.
Yeah.
And there are a whole bunch of islands encased in the ice in Antarctica, going all the way around. And I wonder to what extent our being excluded from Antarctica is the real story that we are not told. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But the same group that keeps the secrets about one thing keeps all the secrets. And there has to be a way that the mainstream media, I mean, you probably hear the same silly stories that we hear.
Oh, yeah.
And the media is only owned by 6 corporations, and they're all globalist. Okay. They all tell the same stories. I don't know how to fix that.
And do you know, Emily, they use a language, coded language.
Yes.
Right under our noses, how they communicate. Tomorrow we will do a nuclear force flag in Japan, or 5 days from now. You can see they
use their numbers. They use their numbers and their dates. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And there is a video, I believe, from 2013 leaked, Illuminati, Illumicorp training video, and if you see the end of it, there you have brochures that they gave brochures to these Illuminati traitors, how they communicate in the mainstream media, like MSN.com,
ABC, NBC, CNN. Yeah.
So it's a language.
It's a language. And so what you find is that the people who listen to them have a completely different worldview than the people who don't listen to them. And there's no way to talk back and forth between the two populations, because they have a coherent story that makes sense to them, only it's not true. And it's so hard to get them to open their mind to the reality that they're being lied. It's easier to fool somebody than to teach somebody they're being fooled. And they just remain in the propaganda, and there's no way to even talk. It breaks up families. Families break up over this. It happens all the time. Certain parts of the family don't talk to other parts of the family. They write them off. It's called ghosting. I'm pretty much ghosted in my family because I don't believe the right thing. You notice how the church is all about beliefs, and they have so little to say about behavior? Well, in the beginning, if you read the rules of the church, what Jesus talked about was behavior, how people treat each other. So how come we're now stuck in, do you believe the right thing or do you believe the wrong thing? They took the focus of our social interactions away from being decent and kind to each other and put it on, do you think the right things? Which is so ridiculous, but it happens all the time. And I know a lot of people who think that I believe all the wrong things. And that's just how it is, okay? And that's between us and the cosmos. Whether we believe the right things or believe the wrong things. Because we have to deal with events in time and process and location, and we're on a time clock all the time. But the cosmos are in eternity. They don't have time. They don't need time, because they don't exist in these little pieces of time. So it's hard to talk to them. I don't know. You talk to them?
I just wanted to go back. This picture, I told you that William Colby was in Norway there already, and people believe that it was what got him killed. They assassinated him in 1996 when he was about to publish his memoirs, and there's a picture. But I don't know if you know about the park in Oslo, in Norway. They have a Vigeland Park, Frogner Park, but the statues are from, like, I believe 1940s. You can see reptilians reptilians eating people, humans. You can see pedophilia expressed so vividly.
Oh, how now! I was in Oslo for a few days. I never saw that.
Yeah. It's a Frogner Park. It's Vigeland exhibition, or
terrible.
Gustav Vigeland. He was, I believe, Freemason.
Okay, all right. Well, on all of the royal houses are part of the Freemasons formally, but I follow the royal houses because, you know, they're part of the family that my father was part of, but they don't all do it in practice. I notice a couple of the royals are still genuine. They're still real. The two that really impressed me are Queen Margareta of Denmark. She really works at it, and the older king of Belgium who
I'm sorry, but haven't you heard about the sacrificing of children? Belgium is epicenter.
They're into the sacrifice of children.
There are so much report of it, that especially Belgium yes. And Dutch and
Holland, Belgium and Holland. Yeah, but they still take their monarchy seriously as a functioning body of leaders.
Have you heard?
Unlike what has happened in other places.
Have you heard about? Can you see him?
Yes.
It's Roland Bernard. He was a banker in Dutch banker, and he was like he understood or was involved in this Illuminati fraud and hardcore criminality within banking system. And then he said that they tried to make him to kill a child. And it was too much for him, so I believe he ended up in intensive care with breakdown, and then he told the people what's going on, that like 8,500 people are ruling this world, and the methods, the cruel.
Yes, and they're allowed to because the law lets them. The law, commercial law dominates, and the commercial law, in commercial law, a child is a product. A child is a consumable product. You can do whatever you want with if you can get that child off to the side, because with your name in all capital letters on your birth certificate, you have become chattel cattle to the corporate state, and it can use you as it chooses. All of that pedophilia stuff is because it's legal under commercial law. That's where we fix it. That's how we stop it. And I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's heavy there in the Netherlands and Belgium.
Oh, that's terrible.
I wanted to ask you, do you know about some quite very negative stuff that people talk about the mother of Queen Elizabeth, Elizabeth Windsor. And I will show you. Have you seen this? His name is James Casbolt, or Prince Michael.
Yes.
Michael Prince. You have heard, it's from Miles Johnson channel. It's his interview from 2011.
Yes.
And he says that they took I believe 42 children from their birth, put them in military base in Rocky Mountains in Canada, and they were tortured and all kind of harsh stuff. But what he said, that they were trained by George Bush Sr. and mother of Elizabeth Windsor.
Yes. Well, now my father had some very unpleasant experiences with the mother of Queen Elizabeth II. Okay. George V wanted my father, Edward, to marry Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons. She was the daughter of the Earl of Strathmore, where Prince of Wales Albert Victor was kept prisoner until his death in 1931. And her being made queen was a promise that George V gave to the Earl of Strathmore. So Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons was going to be the queen, period. That was it. There was no other woman who was going to be the queen. The issue was, which one of George V's sons was she going to marry? Okay. Edward couldn't stand her. He spurned her. He couldn't stand her at all. Okay. And that's why King George V told him, if you don't marry the woman I give you to marry, I'm not going to give you permission to marry at all. That's why Edward VIII didn't marry until George died, because he couldn't get permission to marry. All right. So Edward's younger brother married this very spoiled woman, all right, who considered herself to be the queen elect from the time she was born. Okay, from her very birth, she was special. All right. And she hated my father with a passion. All right. She was Illuminati. She was Luciferian. And she participated in satanic rituals her entire life. Yes. I hope that her soul never sees the light of day again. I hope that whatever cosmic beings are in charge of our world, she will never be back, because she was a very bad influence. Now, Elizabeth, she was never pregnant. Elizabeth was the artificially inseminated daughter of Winston Churchill. It was his seed, and it was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons, lady in waiting, that actually gave birth to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth is not a royal at all, never has been. And her whole attitude is mercantile. She's as mercantile as the Rothschilds, strictly a mercantile. She doesn't have a royal perspective on anything. She's the game show host who hands out the prizes, but it never occurs to her that her job is to facilitate and to be the check and balance for the issues that come before the royal house. It never occurs to her. And that's because she's not a royal. She's never been a royal.
When you said this about that the children were not born, have you seen the what's her name, Kate Middleton, or?
Yes, well, she's a Rothschild also.
10 hours after she gave birth to the second child, and it was the same with the
she looked like she'd never been
look at her legs. 10 hours after. Yeah. And here she walks like it was a obviously fake pregnancy, don't you think so?
Well, they don't have they don't carry their own children, and so they use surrogates for pregnancy so that they keep their their figures and stuff. But
And
it means that their bloodlines are completely tainted,
uh,
and their children don't have psychic skills.
yeah, but maybe the children are augmented. What do we know about these children? They augment
If you
genetically.
look at the pictures of George and Charlotte, they don't look augmented to me, because they're usually being calmed down from a tantrum. They are kids who are augmented, okay, are very calm. Have you met these indigo children who grow up in the middle class? Nobody ever bothers them, and they're exceedingly calm. Nothing rattled. The kids are they'll just stand and talk to you like a 60-year-old. Okay. George and Charlotte are not like that. I have seen media pictures of them being calmed down from repeated tantrums and temper problems. So I don't think that those kids have been augmented at all. In
But
fact,
anyway, it's
if
not.
if we did a DNA test of Victoria, in fact, that's exactly what's going to happen, because my friend Donnie knows some people in Germany who have access to the DNA of Kaiser Wilhelm and his part of the bloodline. Okay, we're going to do DNA tests of the Wilhelm bloodline, the Tsar Nicholas bloodline, and some members of my own bloodline. And we're going to see just how close to the royal family Elizabeth II really is. I'll bet you she doesn't even qualify as a member of the family. I'll bet you her
Right.
children don't either. Well, we know that Andrew and Edward are not Charles's. So, all right. So the royal family isn't really royal.
Andrew and are not Philip.
Philip, I meant Phillips. Yeah, Andrew and Edward aren't Phillips, and William and Harry aren't Charles's. So how close to royal blood are they? Do they have any? Who knows?
And what does it matter? Like Theresa May, the Prime Minister, and so in Britain, she should check maybe that when Kate Middleton gave birth, so-called birth, she would be there and check it according to some
But you
rules.
see, it's
She
it's
wasn't
the
there.
DNA. The DNA test is what tells, and I think the whole royal family needs to be DNA tested to see whether they belong to the same bloodline as the royal Queen Victoria, who was validated. Because if they're not part of the royal bloodline, you don't have the psychic abilities, telepathy, clairaudience, clairvoyance, in order to be discerning enough to be the monarch. That's what royal bloodline is about. You've got to have psychic kings and queens. And if you're not in the royal, if you don't have the DNA abilities, programmed abilities, psychic abilities, you can't be an effective monarch. And Elizabeth, being her father was Winston Churchill and her mother was a house servant, she doesn't have the DNA of a psychic like Moses, or like Mary Magdalene, or like Christ, or like some of these cosmic ascendant transcendent characters. If you're going to be a monarch, you have to have all those abilities. And
But
that's what bloodline determines.
Emily, I see it differently. We are in trouble. These people has caused, as I view it, caused the world wars,
And
They,
that's going to be stopped.
should,
That has to
they
be stopped.
should pay for it
Yes.
with all
Yes.
their property. The
Yes.
people should get back the property,
Yes.
the land.
Absolutely. You need land reform. You need the commercial laws to be placed only on the commercial dimension, and the common laws of the land, the laws of the people need to be applied so that there's freedom of speech, freedom of association, and property rights to some extent. Yes, I agree completely that what goes around comes around. There's such a thing as karma, and it has to be applied. It's time.
Yeah.
It's
If you're a British citizen and you learn that the regime wanted to nuke you, you have right to get compensation. I believe it
well,
should.
yeah, but money doesn't fix everything. You
Yeah,
need
but if we don't have debt, the state debt would be nullified, and
exactly.
some more money for, like, we have to re-educate people.
Yes.
Why should you pay for the school of journalism? What have they done for you? Uh,
They've confused us all.
should you pay for the law schools when what we have has led to, we are almost in a state of complete lawlessness? It's just so close to it.
Well, tell me about Czechoslovakia, because there's nothing about it coming on any of my news sources. I haven't heard anything about that whole area of the world since the problems in Kosovo under Bill Clinton.
Yeah, it's Czech Republic, Slovak Republic. It was Czechoslovakia before. It's infiltrated, but we are under the rule of Brussels.
Oh.
And like chief military boss, highest were educated in Britain,
Okay,
and they are
so
in
it's a
Brussels.
hierarchy.
So the military here are not on the side of the people. Of course,
Okay.
it's the same Illuminati NATO.
Okay, that's what I didn't know. Okay,
Yeah,
because Russia has kind of gotten loose.
yeah.
Russia's loose a little bit, and Russia and China are threatening the Illuminati from the point of view of just massive numbers of non-conforming people. We'll see how Mr. Trump does with this juggling of politics. How is Mr. Trump perceived in Czechoslovakia as a white guy on a white horse come to fix the problem, or as another part of the problem?
We had the same propaganda here as you have. I believe the chief of television, state-run television, is educated in United States
Okay,
with
all
this
right.
Illuminati language and all this propaganda. So what's on the news is the same
Okay,
nonsense.
from the perspective of somebody who lives in California with a globalist governor and who's watching, I watch every day, I think that Mr. Trump is going to continue to surprise the world, and he's doing some very unexpected things, and he may be a little ray of light and hope in the whole mess. He's not.
I don't view it that way. He is not one of them totally. He's not one of the top, like he's not a slave or a henchman of a boss of Illuminati like Barack Obama was, or the Clinton.
But he's a wild card. He's a wild card.
But what can you do when you have Secret Service so highly involved in criminality? Who is Robert Miller, former FBI chief, who started as chief of FBI a few days before 9/11?
Oh, Mueller, yes,
Miller.
Mueller. Well,
And
and he's also the one who approved the 9/11 Commission report. He's also the one who delivered samples of uranium to Russia in 2009 as a personal favor to Mrs. Clinton. So he's not a trustworthy person. Let's put it
yeah,
that way.
and you know another Miller, Heinrich Miller, the chief of Gestapo, after that he was moved to Argentina, who are his children.
Oh, so the more things proceed, the more it's the same stuff. Okay. Well, looking back, it's the same stuff in between the death of George V and World War II as we're going through right now. Same stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Have you heard that about Captain Mark Richards, who is in prison? And he says that he and his father, when he was little, that he was, I believe, in Britain, and it was some treaty with negative ETs, like reptilians or something like that.
Oh,
And
the
that,
Greys probably. That's who the
and that,
Brianna Treaty was with.
that as I understand it, that Charles Windsor and Philip of British key,
Yeah, you see, they're
they were
involved
involved.
in the same treaties. Yes,
Oh,
that's correct.
which is high treason against humanity.
Yes, it's all high treason against humanity. And the legal profession, the law profession, aids and abets and facilitates and profits off of the conflicts that occur because we have treaties that give no rights to humanity, to life, or to free speech, or to life and breath. Yes, we have treaties that have to be abrogated and fixed, and that's where I'm focused now.
Mm. Emily, also, I have heard you talking about Nibiru,
Yeah.
and in my view, now I have been fooled by the head of Illuminati, William Van Down, or people around him, I believe, but I believe that Nibiru flyby is very close to us now. I don't know if you have seen this little booklet.
Well, I've been following it since 2003.
Yeah.
And I have pictures of its physical interactions with our atmosphere, and I have pictures of its moons, and I have re-rendered some of the pictures of Nibiru itself to show the various interdimensional levels. It's basically interdimensional until it gets to a third density physical core. So I'm very familiar with Nibiru. It has been very close to us since 2011. And the scuttlebutt I hear, just scuttlebutt, I don't know if it's right or wrong, is that Nibiru is not leaving anymore. It's going to be a permanent feature in our space. It's going to permanently affect our world. And because of repeated ice, it has a wake like a boat. You've seen it has wings. You've seen pictures of it has wings. Those wings are ice and water, and those wings have repeatedly swamped the planet Nibiru and us. You can see it caused by the HAARP, HAARP, the HAARP grid in the sky, okay? And it has cost Nibiru a great deal of their population in the outer folds of Nibiru. What is left of their population are on the inside in the encapsulated part of Nibiru, and they have lost their leadership. And so Nibiru is going to become part of our living neighborhood. And we're going to adapt to it, and it's going to adapt to us, and we will come to peace. That's where I stand with it. That they are not an enemy. I don't believe they ever intended to harm us. I think the harm came because they live in eternal now. They live only in eternal now. They have no concept of what we have to do to keep up with time, the alarm clock, get to work on time, the commute, get the kids to school on time, how things grow in time, the body processes in time. They have no concept of any of that. And so they're making a mess of our society. Was not on purpose. It was according to a treaty that they had to deal with called the Anu Treaty that was signed after the Lyran Wars. Okay, so yes, what you're saying is they are close and they are going to affect us, and that is true. And it's not terrible. It's going to be all right. That's what I believe.
Yeah, when I have read this little book, which is like part of the Corbin Bible, and it's quite heavy stuff. Also, what happened last time when Nibiru flyby happened, it was Exodus.
Yes,
it's
that's right. Is that a Jim McCanney book?
Greg Jenner.
No, okay. I have the Colburn also. And,
it's Planet X and the Colburn Bible connection, Atlantis, Deluge, Exodus, and it's described like that the water will be polluted or was polluted last time by the iron oxide, and like the cinders, the hot stones, that brimstones that fall, and
yeah, the sulfur, the burning sulfur. Yes, I'm familiar with that. And when Nibiru approaches our planet, yes, there are a lot of problems, and I believe they're trying to work them out. They're not going out. They're not leaving anymore, but we'll see what happens. But I don't believe that they're toxic people. I don't believe they have any intention to hurt us. I think they would like the association to be a safe one.
Well, what have you heard about Malachi Martin? He was probably assassinated, murdered 1999. He was in Vatican quite high, and one of things he said that Vatican is observing a celestial body that will come maybe 20 years later.
Yes, that's right. And it is here, and he was correct. And Dr. Harrington was correct that Nibiru would come. But in the past, it has always left again. And I think what they are trying to do is to create the conditions to allow the two worlds to remain in proximity so that we can develop each other. I don't think Nibiru wants to harm us or the people who run it. So I don't believe that there's so much evil in the universe that we don't have a chance.
Well, I believe there's quite a lot of evil on this planet because those people who are hiding it from us are committing crimes, because this is a planned genocide, not to tell people that they should have water and how they should prepare so that people would have chance to survive it.
That's correct. And we are taught about a population explosion and too many people and all of that. That's a false teaching that should never have been taught. And yes, we are deceived every which way. And as a result, we are learning to get undeceived. We are learning to slice and dice information and to find the truth in it. And hopefully our meetings are going to contribute to that.
Yeah, and I wanted to say also about Malachi Martin. He said also that there are ongoing satanic masses in Vatican, and also that they have got a huge Luciferian mass or black mass or on 29th of June of 1963. He said before he was killed, Malachi Martin, that like the Antichrist or the leader of New World Order would be here some 20 years later. He died 1999, so he would be here. He said that he was born already, and that we will learn this Antichrist or the leader of the New World Order.
Yes, and I believe that the Antichrist was George Herbert Walker Bush.
No.
Who do you think it is?
William Van Down, born 20th of May 1963, Belgium, United States. He lives in California. He has lived in California a lot.
Okay, I don't know anything about him yet. I don't know anything, but that's something I can learn about.
Yeah.
There's always more.
Yeah, I maybe have some picture of him somewhere. But
I always blame it on George Herbert Walker Bush.
No, it's you know, if you want to say or cheat the people that you are Jesus, because the Antichrist would say, "I am Jesus," isn't it so? He wouldn't be well known. He would be from totally unknown, suddenly well known for the whole world.
Okay.
So, because in the Bible it's written that about the second coming of Jesus, that he will come as a thief at night, which means suddenly. So
that makes sense.
William Van Down is actually the chief of Hollywood and music industry and secret service and military and everything, and nobody knows him because.
Okay. All right. Well, then give me a source. Send me a source to find out, because I don't know anything about him.
I believe in the Bible is written that the Antichrist is his father is from the tribe of Dan. Van down. And his mother from the tribe of Judah. His mother, according to Fritz Springmeyer's research, and he has communicated with William Van Down.
Okay.
He's the chief of Illuminati since 2009. So his mother is Oppenheimer.
Okay. All right. Well, I need to catch up with that, so I will look it up. Thank you very much for that tip.
I would like to talk about like laws and what we could do legally. The system is not working. The authorities are wrong. The principles are wrong.
Yes. Okay. And that's something that Alfred Weber and I are talking about, because he has a petition going to Congress to abrogate the false space treaties that underlie the commercial exploitation of humanity. Okay. Yes, we could do a whole hour on that one.
Yeah, and could we like talk very simple things? How shall we solve this problem? Like,
okay, all right. I'll make that a research topic and a goal for the next week or so, and let's get together again and get some practical steps that ordinary people can take to get free from the legal system.
Yeah, and that we could get economic compensation for all the criminality.
Again. Right. Okay. Well, then that's a good project for next week, and it's been a couple of hours now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Emily. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and this is good work for us to do. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Oh.